The night my husband humiliated me in front of his entire family, it wasn't the screaming that broke me. It was the silence. The kind of silence that settles over a room when everybody already knows something except the woman sitting in the middle of it. I still remember the exact sound my wine glass made when I placed it back on the table. Soft, controlled, careful. Like if I moved too fast, my whole life might crack open right there between the mashed potatoes and crystal candle holders. It was Thanksgiving in Chicago. Cold outside, wind rattling the windows of the private dining room at the Ashford Country Club, while 20 people sat beneath golden chandeliers pretending to be respectable human beings. And at the center of that table sat my husband, Ethan Cole. Perfect tie, perfect smile, perfect liar. His mother had spent the entire evening parading around in pearls and champagne satin, introducing people to our future. At the time, I thought she meant the family business. Turns out she meant another woman. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand something first. People think betrayal starts with cheating. It doesn't. Betrayal starts in smaller places. A look someone avoids, a sentence left unfinished, a hand that slowly stops reaching for yours in public. That's how it started with Ethan. Not all at once, just tiny little cuts over years until one day you realize you've been bleeding quietly the whole time. I met Ethan when I was 29 years old at a rooftop fundraiser downtown. He was charming in that dangerous kind of way wealthy men sometimes are. The kind who look at you like you're the only person in the room while secretly calculating what you can offer their life. Back then, I mistook attention for love. Huge mistake. He worked for his father's investment firm, Cole and Mercer Capital. Old Chicago money, Lake Forest summers, country club memberships, private schools. The kind of family that smiles while judging you. Meanwhile, I grew up in Indiana with a single mother who worked double shifts at a hospital and taught me two important things before I turned 18. Never depend completely on anybody, and always read before you sign. Those lessons saved my life later. At first, Ethan felt different from his family, warmer, kinder. He brought coffee during tax season when I worked late at my accounting firm. He kissed my forehead while I studied spreadsheets on Sunday mornings. He told me I made him feel peaceful. And honestly, I loved him so much I ignored every red flag waving directly in my face. Like the first time his mother Catherine asked me if my family had any notable connections during dinner. Or when his father Charles told Ethan right in front of me that beauty fades but family pedigree lasts forever. Ethan laughed it off. I laughed too. That's what women do sometimes when we desperately want acceptance. We shrink our instincts to fit inside somebody else's comfort. 2 years later, we got married in a cathedral downtown with 600 guests and flowers hanging from the ceiling like something out of a celebrity wedding magazine. People called us perfect together. God, I hate that word now. Perfect. Nothing dangerous hides behind obvious ugliness. The worst destruction usually wears expensive suits and polished smiles. The pressure started almost immediately after the honeymoon. Babies, grandchildren, legacy. The Cole family treated reproduction like a corporate merger. At every holiday dinner, Catherine would ask some version of the same question. So, when were we getting a little Cole heir? At first, I smiled politely. Then I laughed it off. Then eventually, I started dreading family dinners altogether. Because underneath her sweet voice was accusation, always accusation. When Ethan and I struggled to conceive after a year of trying, everything got worse. Doctor appointments, hormone testing, fertility specialists. I blamed myself immediately. Of course I did. Women are trained to. Meanwhile, Ethan acted supportive, calm, patient. He'd hold my hand in waiting rooms, tell me everything would work out, tell me he loved me no matter what. But looking back now, he never once got tested himself, not once. And somehow I never questioned that. One night, after another failed fertility treatment, I cried so hard in our bathroom I could barely breathe, mascara running down my face, hands shaking, humiliation sitting in my chest like concrete. Ethan sat beside me on the floor and whispered, "Maybe it's just not meant to happen." At the time, it sounded comforting. Later, I realized it sounded guilty. The real unraveling began 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I came home early from work because one of my clients canceled unexpectedly. Our penthouse apartment was quiet, except for Ethan's voice drifting from his office. He was on the phone, angry. He snapped, "You promised this would stay private." Silence. Then, "She can never find out." My stomach tightened instantly. I should have walked in right then. I didn't. Fear makes people hesitate when truth is standing directly in front of them. Instead, I quietly left the apartment and sat in my car downstairs for nearly 45 minutes, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. I wish I hadn't. Because women know. Deep down, we always know. The next morning, my best friend Ava showed up at my office holding 2 iced coffees, and one look at my face told her everything. "What happened?" "Nothing," I lied. She rolled her eyes immediately. Ava had been my best friend since college, sharp-minded, protective, worked as a legal assistant for one of the top divorce attorneys in Chicago. Nothing escaped her. "Rachel," she said quietly, "you only use that voice when something is very wrong." So I told her. Not everything, just enough. The weird phone call, the distance, the constant pressure from his family. Ava listened without interrupting. Then she asked one question that changed everything. "Has Ethan ever had fertility testing done?" I blinked. "No." Her expression shifted slightly. "Not even once?" "No." She leaned back slowly. "That's weird." At the time, I defended him. Now, I wish I had listened harder. 3 days later, Ava called me at 10:17 p.m. "Don't panic," she said immediately, which of course made me panic. "What happened?" "I need you to come over." Her apartment was 20 minutes away. I drove through freezing November rain with my heart hammering so loudly I could barely hear the radio. When I arrived, Ava was sitting at her kitchen table beside a sealed envelope. She looked nervous. That terrified me more than anything. "What is this?" She exhaled slowly. "One of our clients works at Northwestern Medical." My stomach dropped. "Okay." She recognized Ethan's name. I stared at her. Ava pushed the envelope toward me carefully. Inside were copies of medical records. Certified. Stamped. Legal. I read the first line 3 times before my brain accepted it. Elective vasectomy. Performed 4 years earlier. 2 years before Ethan and I even met. The room tilted. "No," I whispered. Ava said nothing. I kept reading. Procedure successful. Follow-up confirmed infertility. I suddenly couldn't breathe correctly. All those doctor visits, all those tears, all those nights blaming myself while Ethan held me pretending to comfort me. He knew. The entire time. I looked up at Ava with tears already falling down my face. He let them blame me. Her eyes softened. Yes. That kind of betrayal changes you permanently. not just because of the lie, because of the performance required to maintain it. Do you understand how cruel a person has to be to watch someone suffer for something they secretly know isn't their fault? That night, something inside me died, but something else woke up too. For 2 straight days after learning the truth, I barely spoke. I moved through my life like somebody walking through freezing water, slow, numb, heavy. Ethan noticed, of course, but instead of honesty, instead of guilt, instead of confessing like a decent human being, he became even more careful. That's the thing about liars. Once they realize you might see through them, they don't become truthful. They become strategic. He brought flowers home Thursday night, cooked dinner Friday, touched my shoulder more often, kissed my forehead before bed like he was auditioning for the role of innocent husband. Meanwhile, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many moments in our marriage had been real. And then, Thanksgiving arrived. The setup was almost cinematic in its cruelty. Private dining room, family gathered around candlelight, crystal glasses, old money politeness. I wore a black silk dress and my grandmother's diamond bracelet because suddenly I wanted to feel like myself again. Not Ethan's wife, myself. When we arrived, Catherine hugged me with rehearsed affection. "You look tired, sweetheart," she said. Translation: still failing to give us a grandchild? Charles barely acknowledged me beyond a nod. Typical. But something else felt strange too. People kept glancing at Ethan, then at me, then quickly away again, like they were waiting for something. Halfway through dinner, I realized why. There was one empty chair at the far end of the table, reserved. At exactly 8:12 p.m., the door opened, and in walked a woman wearing red. Tall, beautiful, dark hair cascading over one shoulder, confident smile, maybe 30 years old. Every conversation at the table immediately died. Catherine stood. There she is. The woman kissed Catherine's cheek, then Charles. Then she walked directly toward Ethan and kissed him, right in front of me. Not a friendly kiss, not confusion, not ambiguity, a relationship. I heard somebody inhale sharply across the table, but nobody stopped it. Nobody looked shocked, because they already knew. Everybody knew, except me. The humiliation hit so hard I physically felt dizzy. Ethan finally looked at me, not apologetic, not ashamed, just uncomfortable, like this whole thing was becoming inconvenient. "This is Madison," Catherine announced calmly. Madison smiled at me like she was meeting a coworker at brunch. "Hi, Rachel." I stared at her, then at Ethan. What is this? Silence. Charles cleared his throat first. "Son," he said evenly, "go ahead." Ethan exhaled slowly, like a man preparing for a difficult business meeting. "Rachel, we've been unhappy for a long time." There it was, that coward phrase people use when they want to rewrite history instead of admit betrayal. "We?" I repeated quietly. Madison sat beside him, actually sat down, like she belonged there, like I was already erased. Charles slid a folder across the table toward me. "Given the circumstances," he said, "we believe this is the most dignified solution. Divorce papers. Prepared already. Notarized. Property division outlined. Settlement terms drafted." My hands went cold instantly. And suddenly, everything made sense. The phone call, the distance, the empty chair. This wasn't spontaneous, this was coordinated, planned, a family operation. I looked around the table slowly. Nobody would meet my eyes except Ava. Because yes, Ava was there too, dating Ethan's cousin at the time, quietly watching everything unfold. And when our eyes met, she gave the tiniest shake of her head. Not yet. I understood immediately. So instead of breaking down, I got calm, terrifyingly calm. I opened the papers, read every page carefully. Charles mistook my silence for weakness. You'll find the settlement generous. I almost laughed. Generous? They were offering me money like a company's severance package after emotionally destroying me for years. Ethan finally spoke again. It's better this way. I looked directly at him. Is it? He swallowed hard. Good. For the first time all night, he looked nervous. Then Catherine delivered the final insult. Madison is expecting, she announced softly. The room went still. I felt something inside my chest crack open completely. Pregnant. That was why. Not love, not happiness. An heir. That's all I had ever been measured against in this family. And now they had found a replacement model. I looked at Madison. She actually seemed uncomfortable now. Maybe she didn't realize how ugly this would feel in real life. Or maybe she simply didn't expect me to stay composed. Either way, I almost pitied her. Almost. Then Ava stood up, quietly, calmly, and pulled a white envelope from her purse. Before Rachel signs anything, she said, there's something everyone here should probably see first. Charles frowned immediately. What is this? Ava slid the envelope toward him. Open it. The room shifted instantly. You could feel it, like pressure changing before a storm. Charles opened the envelope slowly, pulled out the medical records, read the first page, then the second. His face lost all color. Catherine leaned toward him. What is it? He handed her the papers silently. She read them, then looked at Ethan with absolute horror. What is this? Nobody spoke, so I did. Ethan had a vasectomy 4 years ago, I said evenly. The entire room froze. Madison blinked. What? I looked directly at Ethan. You let your family blame me for infertility while knowing the truth the entire time. Catherine looked physically sick now. Charles stood abruptly from his chair. You told us she couldn't conceive. Ethan's face went pale. You lied to us? Charles thundered. And there it was. Not concern for me, not guilt for humiliating me. His anger came from being deceived himself. That family only cared about betrayal when it happened to them. Then Ava spoke again. Oh, we're not done. She pulled out one final document. My pregnancy test. Positive. Confirmed 3 days earlier. Because life has a twisted sense of humor sometimes. Rare vasectomy reversal, possible though uncommon. My doctor had called it extraordinary. I called it divine timing. Catherine stared at the paper trembling. Madison looked like she might faint. And Ethan... God, I will never forget Ethan's face. Because in one single moment, he realized everything he thought he secured was collapsing. The mistress, the family approval, the heir narrative, all of it, gone. You're pregnant? He whispered. I looked him dead in the eyes. Yes. Silence exploded across the room. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. It felt like the entire dining room had slipped underwater. Charles looked at Ethan with a level of disgust I had never seen before. You absolute idiot. Madison stood slowly from her chair. "Wait," she said shakily. "You told me she couldn't have children." Ethan looked trapped now, cornered, sweating. "I thought she couldn't." I almost laughed at the insanity of that sentence. Thought? No, he knew the odds were low because he chose them to be low. He built an entire lie around probability and then acted shocked when life refused to cooperate. Madison stared at him like she was finally seeing the real man underneath the expensive suits and practiced charm. That's the problem with men who build their identity around appearances. Eventually, reality walks into the room uninvited. Catherine sat down heavily in her chair. Tears filled her eyes. But not for me. Never for me. For the family reputation. For the embarrassment. For the scandal. Because wealthy families survive on image more than love. And their perfect image had just shattered publicly between pumpkin pie and coffee service. I stood slowly, picked up my purse, closed the divorce folder carefully, then slid it back across the table toward Charles. "You can tell your attorneys my lawyer will respond next week." Ethan stood quickly. "Rachel, wait!" "No." That single word hit harder than yelling. Because calm women are dangerous after betrayal. We stop arguing once we finally understand the truth. And the truth was simple. Ethan never loved me more than he feared disappointing his father. That kind of man will sacrifice anybody to protect his own comfort, even his wife, even his child. I looked directly at Madison one last time. "You should leave too," I said quietly. She swallowed hard. For a second, I saw genuine shame cross her face. Maybe she truly didn't know. Maybe Ethan lied to her too. Wouldn't surprise me. Men capable of double lives rarely stop at one deception. Then I turned and walked out. No dramatic scene, no tears. Just heels clicking across polished hardwood floors while 20 silent people watched their perfect Thanksgiving collapse behind me. Outside the country club, Chicago air hit my lungs like ice water. Cold, sharp, real. I made it halfway down the stone staircase before my knees almost gave out. And then Ava appeared beside me instantly, like she always did. Best friends are strange miracles. They show up carrying truth even when it destroys everything. She wrapped her coat around my shoulders without speaking. For a full minute, neither of us said anything. Then finally she asked softly, "How bad does it hurt?" I stared out toward the parking lot lights shimmering across wet pavement. Like somebody set my whole life on fire. Ava squeezed my shoulder. "Good." I blinked at her. That sounded psychotic. It was supposed to. Despite everything, I laughed. Actually laughed. A broken-sounding laugh, but real. Because sometimes surviving humiliation creates this strange emotional whiplash where your body doesn't know whether to cry or collapse or laugh at the absurdity of human behavior. Behind us, the country club doors burst open. Charles's voice echoed outside, angry, loud. Ethan followed seconds later. "Rachel!" I turned slowly. His tie was loosened now, hair messy, panic all over his face. Interesting how quickly confident men unravel once consequences arrive. "Please, just talk to me," Ava muttered under her breath. "Boy, bye." I almost smiled. Ethan walked toward us carefully. "Rachel, I didn't know how to tell you." I stared at him. "You had 4 years." That hit him hard. Good. I never meant for it to go this far. Another lie people tell when their actions finally catch up to them. Nobody accidentally organizes a public divorce ambush at Thanksgiving dinner. That takes planning. Cowardly planning. "You let me hate myself," I said quietly. His eyes filled immediately. "I know. You let me believe my body failed you. I'm sorry." Sorry. Such a tiny word for such enormous damage. I studied him for a long moment, then asked the only question that still mattered. "Did you ever actually love me?" He looked devastated by that question, but not devastated enough to answer immediately. And honestly, that hesitation told me everything. Finally, he whispered, "I did." Did. Past tense. Interesting. I nodded slowly. Then I said something I hadn't realized until that exact moment. "You loved me the way people love things that make their lives easier." His face crumpled because he knew it was true. Real love protects. Real love tells truth. Real love does not sit silently while an entire family humiliates the person carrying your child. I stepped back beside Ava. "You don't get to be part of our life." "Rachel, please." "No." My voice stayed calm, steady, final. "You chose your father over me every single time. Eventually, choices become character." Silence. Cold wind swept through the parking lot, and suddenly Ethan looked smaller somehow. Not physically, spiritually. Like the illusion of power had drained out of him all at once. I think that was the moment he realized what he truly lost. Not the marriage, not the reputation, not even the baby. Me. The woman who loved him before the world turned ugly. The woman who defended him, believed him, built a home beside him. Gone. And some losses never come back. The divorce finalized 6 months later. Charles pushed for privacy. Of course he did. Rich families bury scandals like bodies. The settlement heavily favored me after Ethan's deception surfaced legally, especially once my attorney documented the emotional distress caused by the fertility manipulation. Turns out, judges don't love that kind of cruelty. Who knew? I kept the condo, kept my retirement accounts, kept my peace. Most importantly, I kept my son. I gave birth on a stormy July night when thunder shook hospital windows over downtown Chicago. Ava held one hand, my mother held the other. And when they placed my baby boy on my chest for the first time, something inside me healed that I thought was broken forever. I named him Noah because after destruction comes rebuilding. And that child rebuilt me piece by piece without ever knowing he was doing it. Meanwhile, Ethan's life collapsed quietly. Madison left before the wedding rumors even started. Apparently, she discovered several more lies after Thanksgiving, shocking absolutely nobody. Charles removed Ethan from the company within the year after a failed investment scandal nearly damaged the firm publicly. Funny how men raised to worship power often self-destruct chasing more of it. Catherine sent me letters twice. I never answered. Not out of bitterness, just clarity. Some doors close permanently for a reason. 3 years later, I saw Ethan once by accident at a grocery store in Lincoln Park. He looked older, tired, ordinary, and for the first time since everything happened, I felt nothing. No rage, no grief, no satisfaction, just distance. He looked at Noah sitting in the cart beside me, and I watched heartbreak move across his face so fast it almost took my breath away. Because Noah had his eyes, and Ethan knew it. He opened his mouth like he wanted to speak. I simply nodded politely and walked away. Not cruelly, not dramatically, just peacefully. And honestly, that was the real ending. Not revenge, not karma, peace. Because healing isn't becoming hard enough to destroy people who hurt you. Healing is becoming whole enough that their destruction no longer matters. That's what nobody tells you about betrayal. It introduces you to yourself. The stronger version, the quieter version, the version that finally stops begging for love from people incapable of giving it correctly. Today, Noah is 6 years old, obsessed with dinosaurs and blueberry pancakes. He laughs exactly like my mother. He thinks Ava is secretly a superhero because she once fixed his toy truck with duct tape and a paperclip. And every single night before bed, I tell him the same thing my mother taught me years ago. Never depend completely on anybody, and always read before you sign. Because sometimes survival begins with paying attention to the fine print people hope you'll ignore.